And I love what you said too, that we get stuck in our mind, because it's so true that as adults, our prefrontal cortex is so fully developed. Our child's is not. Our child is in a more primal brain state. So we have to use these more primal tools, right? I always say we talk way too much to our kids. We need to be more and talk less.
Hi, welcome to the Connect with Sheila podcast. I'm an entrepreneur, self-care strategist, and creator of the Seasons self-care app. I'm committed to helping you reconnect to your purpose, elevate your well-being, and build your version of a happy, successful life. It's interview day, and I'm grateful to have a guest on today. Carley Aroldi is a clinical play therapist, childhood mental health expert, mom of two, and founder of Peaceful Parenting. She's here to reimagine what family life can look and feel like, especially for parents who are overwhelmed by their big feeling kids. She specializes in mindful family dynamics, trauma-informed practices, and the power of play and creativity. She holds a BA in film and media studies, an MA in mental health counseling, and a postmaster's graduate certificate in infant and early childhood mental health. She recently completed her tenure as a board member on the New Jersey Association of Infant Mental Health. Carley, it's such a pleasure having you on today. I've been so looking forward to this conversation.
Same. Thank you so much for having me. I've been following your podcast for a while, so to be in conversation with you feels like such an honor.
Oh, it's so great. And so we met in a wonderful online community and during a time where maybe some people were going through a lot of big emotions as the world has kind of twisted and turned over the last few years.
As it always does. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And that is so key, right? It's not like it just happens once. It's not like, well, there used to be the good old days. Like, I think we can get really caught up in that, but there's always cycles and seasons of these different challenging times that we face. And so you have a front row seat to what that looks like in the family dynamic. I'd love to hear so much about that. And before we start, I really would love to know what led you into this, because of course, with your experience in film and media studies, now here you are doing this work. Okay. Tell me the story. What's the
You're like, how did that happen? Explain that part. Yeah. So basically, well, just to kind of start, I was always the kid that like loved babysitting, right? I was always into the kids. I was like really fascinated with babies when I was little. I wanted a little brother or sister. I was the youngest in my family, but I'm like, I could, if like someone on our block was pregnant, I'm like, I got to get close to that person so they'll let me hold their baby. Like, I just craved it, right? So I was really into like playing with little kids. I was like I had the babysitters club when I was like 11, my friends and I. And so I've always been really interested in working with young kids. And even, through high school, I actually started college as a child psychiatry major. And then about a year and a half into school, I was like, wait, you can major in movies? That sounds really interesting to me. So, and what I loved about filmmaking and majoring in film was I loved the creative expression part of it, right? This idea that like you can take something that you're feeling in your soul and you put it on a screen and other people then feel it. So that really resonated with me. So I kind of worked in that industry for a little while. I turned and I curved, and then I ended up working for the Tribeca Film Festival, which is a film festival in New York City. And I did part of their youth programming. So I helped a lot of the institute, their nonprofit arm, do a program called Tribeca All Access and different programs where we taught filmmaking to New York City public school students to foster self-expression and social activism. And when I hooked back into that, I was like, oh, this is your passion. You forgot. Right? Like this other thing was really fun and really amazing and grew me in all sorts of creative ways. But once I connected back to like, oh, you work with youth, you work with children. This is what you're supposed to do. It just like the light bulb lit back up. And I was like, I got to get back to school. I got to get back to like understanding how I can support young children. And so I did that for a couple of years, went back and did a master's in counseling where I really focused on working with young children. So my practice now really focuses on kids kind of birth to 10. I don't get into adolescence as much because those are such formative years. Those are the years that we shape how a child's going to see the world, if they're going to see it as friendly, if they're going to see it as dangerous, if they're going to feel supported. And so being with that population is what lights me up. So that's kind of the path that I took for the first part of my career, and then switching over. And that was, oh my gosh, almost 2 decades ago at this point. So it's been a hot minute.
Oh, I love that. I love how you were on your journey of following a creative pursuit and a passion there, and then reconnecting with a passion from when you were younger. And I love it so fun. Babysitter club. I didn't have a club, but I had a few friends who did babysit. I loved it. And I think what I loved the most was being able to get paid to kind of hang out and watch TV, because it was like the best leveraged kind of job for a teenager. And I also thought what was really cool was I had that really neat connection with the kids, though. And just kind of learning those skills. I remember when I first had my own kids, all those things that I learned from the parents of what worked for them, I was able to really use as a parent, which took away any of that potential anxiety about, oh no, how do we do this parenting thing? It just felt really natural, which was cool. I mean, certainly there's always challenges when you're like getting started at something like after all these years.
Hardest job in the world.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And yet so rewarding. And so you stepped into this different realm, and it seems like that was kind of a quick switch for you once you understood that that's what you wanted to do. And how soon did you realize that birth to 10 years old was the age group you wanted to work with?
Yeah, pretty immediately. Like what it felt like to me was like a remembering, right? It was this feeling of not like, oh, that's new and shiny, but like, oh, this is home, right? This is what feels good to you. I just think there's something, and Selma Freiberg, who's this author that writes a lot about this time period, calls it the magic years. And that's what's so appealing to me, that when you have kids in these young years, it's magical, right? Their thinking is actually magical, right? When we think of like stories and myths and legends that we create in our culture for them, like their thinking is magical. The experiences that they have are magical. And so that felt like, oh, I remember I want to be here with this crew, right? These are my people. These young ones are my people, because of how they see the world, and also how they're so open and vulnerable, right? They will just come with this open heart to you if they can feel it, right? And they're also such great judges of character, because I see it. I see kids know who to trust, right? If they've come from supportive environments, they know who they can trust. They know how to find out who they can trust. And, one thing you were kind of saying before about when we are in community together, right? The babysitters, that kind of idea of like, we're not just like parent kid, but when we can be in community together, everybody benefits. So this idea of being with these magic years was always really appealing to me.
They really are magic years. Like I obviously like the infant time where everything is so new, and it's like you're relearning the world through their eyes. And then when they hit 18 months, and for many, not all, but so many, that word explosion happens. And then they're able to actually share what it is that they're seeing. And that trust, like one thing that really, you hit on it when you were just speaking there. What really struck me when I was a young parent was, or early in my parenting journey, I don't think I was young at the time. I started my family kind of late, but I really realized the level of trust that these young little humans need to have. There's no choice they have but to trust the people leading in their lives. And it's like a blind faith in a sense, right? Yes. And so then seeing them grow and come to realizations, it really is a magic time. And like every year has its special magical qualities. And now I have teens who are like, they're magical in a different way.
In a different way. Yeah.
And it is really about like what Dr. Shefali Sabari talks about, like you reparenting yourself at every new phase. Because they're starting to say, no, mom, this is what I think. It's like, oh, right. So I'm not molding and shaping, but even in those younger years where they're like, wow, look at everything, being able to somehow teach them critical thinking skills for the level of life they're at. How do we how do we really start to recognize when our children are extra sensitive?
Yeah. Yeah. And so one thing that you kind of hit on when you were just speaking is remembering that parenting is a relationship and not a skill, right? That's like, if I had a bumper sticker for my world, I would kind of say, we have to remember that we are in relationship with our young kids and our medium-sized kids and our bigger kids. And we're not just like a skill-based set, right? If it was just a skill, I'd write the book, it'd be a bestseller, we'd be done, right? But we're in the relationship with one another. So when we have kids that are sensitive, or I call them big feeling, right? These kids that they're just open to the world in a way that makes them feel very deeply. We think about like, what are we bringing to that energetic exchange together, right? So, and you can usually see this. So when I talk about infant mental health, one of the first questions I ask parents is, tell me about your pregnancy. What was that like for you? Because our kids are born not the minute like their birth certificate says, they're born in our minds, right? They're born in our minds years and years earlier. So when I ask about when you thought about becoming a parent, when did you, how did you come up with your child's name? That's one of my favorite questions. How did you come up with your child's name? Because that's usually a whole story. So this idea of we're creating a relationship with someone before they're even here, right? Before they've even arrived. So sometimes when our kids, and we see it from infancy, I'm like, tell me about them as a baby. That's one of the ideas of infant mental health, is tell me about them as a baby. And they come into the world a certain way. Were they a kid that fell into an easy, like, eat, play, sleep pattern? Were they a kid that like never fell into a routine? And so you start to kind of get a sense very early on, is this a kid that's going to be really empathic to the world around them, really like kind of highly attuned and sensitive to the world around them? Or is this a kid that's going to be like, whatever, go with the flow. I'll sleep in the car. I'll sleep on the bench. I'll sleep wherever. And so when you start to kind of realize the pattern that your child's in, we realize how we can respond to them differently, right? So, just for example, my son had like a 5th grade graduation today. He graduated from 5th grade. It was super sweet. It was so cute. But like a lot of other kids were like going to a park afterwards. So like, oh, they just had their ceremony and then they're going to play and do all this. And the mom's like, oh, is your son going to come? And I'm like, well, we need some downtime. This was a lot of adrenaline this morning, right? This was big, a lot of adrenaline. And if it was my daughter, I'd be like, heck yeah, we're going to the park. She can run around for another 4 hours. But my son's more sensitive, right? So he has this, no, I need to like decompress a little bit, which is really similar to me. Like I had the energy and now I'm going to come down. So when you start to see, oh, my kid is easily triggered by stuff, right? Oh, whether it's loud noises, whether it's big feelings, whether it's overstimulation. Sometimes as parents, we get worried. Like, well, what's wrong with them? Why is my kid tantruming so big? Why is my kid having such a hard time? So our anxiety raises, and then that process of co-regulation, right? That process of we start to get worried and they're like, oh, and then their anxiety goes up and we're going up and up and up and up. And so, we talk about this a lot, which is we want to be the thermostat, not the thermometer. We want to set the temperature for them to bring them back to baseline rather than reacting with them. So I often say we get ourselves so calm that we lend our calm to them, right? I'm so stable and chill. I'm going to be able to give some of mine to you, and that's going to bring you back down. That's what the process is called co-regulation. Does that make sense?
It does. And it's something I've really been studying the last several years when really diving more into the nervous system, as I'm sure you have seen and witnessed in our community. And, it's so interesting because I feel like that was such an innate skill. Like, I don't know if I would call it even a skill. It was an intuition, because when my children were very, very little, I somehow just knew that was true. I couldn't put words to it, but it's like the feeling of like when you're rocking a child and just like it's calming, right? And I knew that, and I saw it too. If I was stressed out and anxious, they would ramp up too. Or if my partner would like, right? Like
those mirror neurons are firing at each other.
Right, exactly. And just like when you smile at someone, typically they'll smile back, right? Like that's kind of, you can't, or if someone starts laughing, you want to start laughing. You don't know what's funny. Like I don't know. Right. Or if someone yawns, you yawn. There's just like, it's very interesting. And so it's so beautiful that like, I love that term, like be the thermostat.
Yes.
Because
Not the thermometer.
it's so powerful. And I notice it even now. And my kids have even mentioned it to me that if I'm maybe having a moment where I'm off or I'm like frustrated about something or whatever, like they'll come over and be like, hey, you know, do you need a hug? Like they're so conscious. They're so loving. And I do see like it will impact them. And they've actually put words to it because I'm always talking about the nervous system with them. They're like, oh yeah, it's our nervous system. We know. And but they say specifically, you know, how you're feeling does impact us. And so seeing that they have an awareness of it, it's pretty cool. But when they're little, they don't know that. And that's why often, you know, tell me about how this works. Like I just love music. I've always got music on, like obviously not right now because, you know, don't want copyrighted stuff on for the podcast. Come on. But the minute we're off, I'm going to have some music on. And I had different kinds of music throughout the day. And music to me, like there's always a time for silence. And I do love silence, but music would always kind of set a vibe. And it's just kind of, it definitely impacts our nervous system. Right.
Yes.
And so, you know, tell me about that, like how you find that has, like things like that or other tools that can help people that are really like easy to grasp and accessible during busy parents' lives to help be a more calming place for their children.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. I love that you're tapping into that because that's really what it is. People come to be like, can you fix my kid? My kid's having so many tantrums. My kid's yelling, my kid's screaming. And I really bring it back to that nervous system set, right? We are in a world right now that is not built for the nervous systems that we have, right? We're not meant to like speed down the highway at 80 miles an hour. Our brains are like haven't evolved for that quite yet. We're not, you know, available for all this information coming at us 24/7. And so this idea when people are like, oh my gosh, ADHD is on the rise and the kids are so anxious and, you know, bullying is so high. And I kind of say like, kids weren't built for the world we're in right now, right? Their brains are not evolved to be able to process everything happening around them. So the very first kind of guidance I give to parents is to slow down, literally slow the pace of your speech, slow the movement of your body, slow, like the number one intervention I give. And it's like every single session with every single person, whether it's the first session with me or the 100th, I say, let's pause. Let's just pause. And if my kid is screaming and my kid is tantruming, I just want to like escape the situation, I put my hand on my heart and I say, I'm safe. I'm safe. Because once I feel safe, then I'm going to be able to communicate safety. And from that primal part of our brain, we hear a baby screaming, our adrenaline rises, right? Our cortisol rises. We hear our teenager like sobbing on the phone because their boyfriend broke up with them. We feel unsafe. We feel like we're in danger. So that nervous system piece of I physically put my hands on my chest and just say, I'm safe, then I can communicate it to them. And so that's one really, really simple practice. Another thing is very much like, I call it like skin to skin contact, which we do with infants, right? Skin to skin. That's still really important through the lifespan, especially as kids are growing, because our instinct when our kids are babies is, well, I know how to soothe them. I'm going to scoop them up into my arms. I'm going to let them feel my heart. I'm going to let them feel my breath, and I'm going to use my body to soothe them. Well, guess what? That still works throughout the lifespan. We sometimes forget it when our kids turn like, 10, 12, like, oh, they don't need me to hold, but they do. They still often need you to hold them. And sometimes they're resistant to it, right? Sometimes they do need space. Sometimes they need to kind of be on their own, but eventually they're going to regulate through our nervous systems. Like that's how we evolved. We evolved to be in relationship with each other, right? We evolved to be looking at each other. We evolved to be touching each other. We evolved to be hearing each other. And I love that you brought up music because I'll send it to you to actually have a playlist for like a calming morning playlist for families that are like, oh, our mornings are always so chaotic and crazy. And it's like, well, let's get some slow beats in there. Let's get a little Jack Johnson going. Let's get like little kind of like slow down beats, because our bodies will kind of rhythmically attune to that. And then their nervous systems kind of chill out too. And so we can do it with lullabies, we do it with singing, we can do it through all these different like vocal techniques. We can do it through chanting sometimes. Like with my kids, we'll do like a call and response sometimes, like a good morning. And they're like, good morning. And so like just that little like back and forth, all the little kind of nervous system moments can really soothe them. And then you're not getting bigger behaviors because they feel more settled. Does that make sense?
It's so good. Oh, like just hearing you talk about it feels good, right? Like,
yeah,
it's kind of like when you think about an easy breezy weekend or an easy breezy vacation where everybody's just flowing, you got some tunes, maybe you're by the lake or by a pool, or just like there's fresh air flowing. How everybody feels is so easeful. And we get to bring that into our daily life. It's like letting ourselves know we get to feel good right now. When it's first thing in the morning and we have a big day ahead, we get to feel good right now. We get to set that tone. So I love those things you've shared, because they're easily accessible for anyone.
Yeah. It's
and
touch.
It's
touch, it's voice, it's contact. Yeah. And water. I love that you said water, because that's another thing I say. I'm like, just add water. If your kid's cranky, like in the winter, we do 3:00 baths. I'm like, everybody's cranky. Let's jump in the bath at 3:00. We do foot soaks 3 nights a week. Like you had a bad day, everyone in our house, everyone has their own foot soak bucket. Like we just like do foot soaks, because like just adding water, if it's summer here, being able to get out in a sprinkler, getting out in a pool, like that is so soothing for a kid's nervous system. Water play when they're toddlers, all those kind of like sensory experiences actually help foster cooperation and connection and reduce some of that challenging behavior.
Oh, my kids used to love, I'd be cooking dinner and they'd be standing on a chair safely, and a really big chair. And they'd be like, oh, can you wash these? Like whatever they could wash with bubbles, like these little dishes or whatever. They'd just be in there, not making a mess either. They just like flowing with it. And they just felt so good and so calm, and the music's on. And I've actually heard it said too, and it makes so much sense, that if someone's having anybody, but we think about children, but really for any of us, if we're having like a big moment, sometimes the best thing we can do is just step outside, step out into nature, whatever that looks like. And we've actually, even with my teens, my husband and I have had some conversations where we knew, okay, we're going to have some conversations that could end up with, a debate, right? And big feelings about, well, these are the decisions. And we invited our kids out onto the grass to have a conversation. And it just felt different. It felt better. And so these things are all accessible to us. It's possible for us to tap into them, but we think from our minds. We think from being the leader of the house, the leader of our children, that, okay, no, I need to share my thoughts, and this is how it is. And you just need to deal with what I have to say. Or someone's, upset as a child, and then, okay, how do I like discipline this out of them or whatever, which really feels so restrictive and constricting and not nourishing and loving. And even though kids, often it's what we may have experienced ourselves, right? So we don't maybe know how to soothe ourselves. So it's like, as parents, starting with soothing ourselves, like you said, hand on the heart, I'm safe. Like right now, present time, in this moment, this is how old I am. I'm safe. I'm good. Yep. I'm fed.
My feet are on the ground. The floor is supporting me. Yeah.
All of that.
Coming back to balance.
Yeah. Coming back to balance. And so, that co-regulation, it's everything. So I feel like listeners have a lot of beautiful tools to really carry through to the relationships they have, like with children, big and small. And
spouses and bosses and coworkers.
It really is transferable to all the humans in our life.
Yeah. And I love what you said too, that we get stuck in our mind, because it's so true that as adults, our prefrontal cortex is so fully developed. Our child's is not. Our child is in a more primal brain state. So we have to use these more primal tools, right? I always say we talk way too much to our kids. We need to be more and talk less, right?
Kids will agree with that.
Yeah, they don't want to hear. They want us to be like, they want us to listen. They want us to be present. They don't want us to always be teaching them and always be doing this. Like, sometimes my kids will come to me like, I had the worst day at school and so is so mean and blah, blah, blah. And all I need to say is, oh, that was a bad day. And that's it. I don't need to say much more after that, because all I need to do is be with them. I don't need to solve it for them.
Oh, that's
sense?
such permission, because I feel like as I was a homeschooling mom for a lot of years, like 13 years, and there was this, you're teaching, you're reading, you're guiding, and then it just becomes kind of the norm because everything's a teachable moment. And thankfully, my kids have the freedom to be able to say to me, actually, I needed a condensed version of this. And so I've become more attuned to, okay, let's really think about this. Right. And so I started a podcast so I can share my thoughts there. And then people
different
can
outlet,
speed it up.
Different outlet. Yeah.
They can speed it up. They can skip it. If it doesn't apply, it's all good.
Yeah.
But it's having that awareness is so valuable. Like just the presence, right? Just the, like you say, as teens, they still need the hugs. Yeah. Like I know if they're coming to me to offer me a hug, and it's because they were also raised that way, to be in a very hugging household. Not everybody is. Maybe that doesn't feel safe for everyone because maybe that's not been their experience. But in a safe environment, it can really just be that, even just a touch on the arm or something, something that feels safe, that feels good, to have that connection. I love all of this so much. And I feel like it's such a beautiful thing to see that you followed the path to where you are now. And I see how it lights you up. And I can only imagine the beautiful blessings that you're passing on to so many families and children.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think it's, when they think about callings, right? It's just was so clear to me from a really young age that this is the work that you're meant to do, right? And like, as you mentioned at the top, like I'm a play therapist. And so remembering that a child's language is play. And so when we communicate through play, to me, I love playing. Like you invite me anywhere, I'm game. Someone's like, we're going to go to axe throwing. I'm like, okay, we'll do that. Like a year ago, I took like a freestyle rap class. I'm like, okay, sure. Like I love to play. And that's how our kids play. That's how our kids communicate. They play. And so this idea of like helping parents learn to be playful, because we get so stuck in our, this has to get done and this has to get done. And then I got to do it just right. And it's like, if we can bring more playfulness to our lives and to our parenting, everybody wins. So it feels like a good work to be doing in the world.
It is. And thank you for that. I want to play more. I'm always saying, like, to my husband too, like we're so focused on all of these things that we want to achieve and accomplish and do. And the list is long and the places of going here and there. And who needs the car now with another son driving? And it's like, okay, how do we have fun? And even in any of my work scenarios, I'm like, hey man, we can make this fun. We can make a Zoom meeting fun. I mean, look at us. We're doing it now, right? Yeah. We get to have fun. And why do we believe it needs to stop to be serious professionals? No, let's keep playing, because I believe that play, the creative spirit, that's how amazing progress in any sphere of life happens. So thank you for saying that. And axe throwing. Okay. I'll give it a shot. Just everybody stand aside.
Stand back.
Stand back. Watch the rap battle would be fun. I gotta find that. I gotta find one of those.
I'm sure they're around you.
Oh, so please share, Carley, what's coming up for you, what you have on offer these days.
Yay. So a couple things, but one is a big one, which is, again, I mentioned that I really want to teach parents how to use play therapy techniques at home to create a little more connection, more calm and cooperation. So I have just a free video with 4 really simple play therapy techniques you can use right away. You can go to paceparent.com/play and get the video. And again, it's 4 little techniques you can use when your kids are big feeling kids, right? When they've got these big emotions and they don't know how to get them out. And so how do we use play to do that? So that's really fun. Like I said, paceparent.com/play. That's one thing you can just jump on there right away. And then this fall, I'm launching a online course just called Good Enough Parenting, because I think so much of us are striving. I have to be the perfect parent. I have to do it just right. And what's the script? And if I don't do it right, my kid's future is just doomed. And I'm just here to remind you that like kids need good enough. They need good enough. They don't need perfect. They need us to be our best selves so that we can then be the best for them, but it doesn't have to be perfection. So I call it's Good Enough Parenting. So that'll launch in October. So you can find all that. If you go to paceparent.com/play, you'll get on the list and you'll be able to see all the upcoming fun offers coming up this fall.
I love that. And are you on Instagram or anything like that too?
Yes. Oh, I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. It's Carley Counsels on Instagram, Carley Counsels on Instagram. And then just my name on Facebook is my business page there, Carley Aroldi.
Oh, so beautiful. Okay, great. Yeah. Because I love to have people shout out to us, how this episode landed, et cetera. So that's wonderful. And I notice people who are not watching this episode, but who are just listening will not see you're sitting in a rocking chair and you've been rocking. I've been I'm in a swivel. So I kind of swivel. And so you're rocking. I imagine that's by design. Tell me about that. And then tell me about what is the self-care that's lighting you up right now?
Yeah. I love that you picked up on that. Not many people do, but it's funny because I do a lot of obviously virtual sessions. I see families all over the world. And so if a family is like, oh my gosh, my kid can't sit still at dinner. And I'm like, well, I'm sitting in a rocking chair. So like, I need movement, right? I'm a dancer. That was a big part of my life. I'm a dancer. So I need to be in motion. I think better if I'm in motion. That's why in play therapy, I'm moving a lot of the time. But when I'm on Zoom, it's very still, right? It's just one-on-one. So I needed to bring movement to my sessions. This is actually the glider that like I got when my son was born and like spent many, many nights sleeping in here. So there's like, it feels like good karma energy in here too. So yeah, being in motion and being in that rhythmic, that's one thing. Sometimes kids come into my office and we just like sway together. We'll sway, we dance, we do all these things that kind of bring us back to center so that then they can express themselves verbally if they want to. But first, we always start with the body. I like to say, if you listen to the body, when it whispers, you never have to hear it scream. So listening to the body is a big piece of what I teach kids. Like, where do you feel this in your body? So the rocking really helps me kind of stay centered, stay focused. And I'd say my number one self-care right now are baths. I try to take a bath like 3 to 4 times a week because it brings me just back to center. Like I usually put a nice podcast on. Sometimes it's Sheila's podcast. And I just like get a little candles going and I just veg out for, a good 20 minutes, half an hour. And I always feel better the next day. If I can get a nice like Epsom salt bath in, I always feel better the next day. And I'm like, it's 20 minutes. It's 20 minutes of my day. And it sets me off on a great, great trajectory for the several days later. So that's my number one self-care that works for me.
That is so beautiful. And yes, a warm bath at night. This is some new things I'm diving into as an aside. Warm bath at night before bed. Yes. And then cold shower in the morning.
Yeah.
Wow. Listeners, you're hearing about my experiment and how that impacts women's health, particularly. So cool. And I love that. Yes. Getting in your body, Epsom salts, the whole 9 yards. I have some beautiful stuff called Dr. Teal's that I like to use. And it's like eucalyptus mint scent. It's so good. Thanks to my wonderful friend, Amy, who's a massage therapist. Shout out to Amy who listens to the podcast. She gave this to me and now I'm addicted. It's so good. So there's bubble bath version and then there's the actual salt version. So they're both so good. So yes, I love this wonderful, again, so accessible for those of us who have a tub. We can have a bath.
Yes, exactly. Or if not, a foot soak. Everyone's got, I guarantee you got a bowl you can just soak your feet into. That is so accessible to everybody. I'll do it for 2-year-olds. I'll be like, hey, you're having a rough day. Let's get your feet in some water. And they just feel so good. They feel so good.
Oh, so beautiful. Carley, this has been such a pleasure. I am so thrilled to be able to share all of these things, especially what you've got coming in the fall. That's going to be so fun. And actually, this episode is going to be probably airing in the fall. So it'll be a nice lead up to this. So the timing is great. Yeah, I love to batch content ahead of time. And so I'm excited to share. And everyone, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. And whether you're a parent or you have children in your life, you were a child once and you also experience big feelings and you have these days where you feel like the emotions are so big to handle. I feel like everyone can take a few little tidbits from today's conversation to implement to help calm, regulate, and feel your best. And so please share what your favorite takeaway from this episode was. You can shout us out on Instagram, whether it is on Instagram or even email, whatever the case. You'll see all of the links for what Carley's offering and how to reach us in the show notes. And again, I'm just so grateful that you listen to these episodes. I appreciate you. Have a beautiful rest of your week. Big blessings.
Thanks, Sheila.